Okay, if you have not done these 3 examples on your own, please pause the video and do them, and then we'll come back and check them together. So in each case, we have a polynomial, many terms, divided by a monomial, one term. So the first thing we'll do here is just write it as a fraction. So we have the first polynomial on the top and the second polynomial on the bottom. Now when I have many terms on the top and one term on the bottom, by far the easiest way is to split it into many fractions. Later on we'll be doing polynomial long division. Please don't do that unless you have to. If you have one term on the bottom, it's far easier to split it into many fractions. Now we do that by taking each of the terms on the top and putting them over the term on the bottom, like this. Now, in addition to splitting it into many fractions, I've actually done a few things here. Take a look at it and see what operations I've actually done. Okay, all the variables are the same, but the signs have changed. So look at the first. I have a positive 3x to the 4th y cubed divided by a negative x squared y squared. So a positive divided by a negative is a negative. I've just put that negative out front. I could put it on the top, I could put it on the bottom, or I could put it out front. It doesn't matter. I just need to have it in one of those 3 places. Now for the middle term, I had a negative divided by a negative, so that gave me a positive. And for the last, I again had a negative divided by a negative, so that also gave me a positive. So I split it into many fractions and I changed signs as appropriate. Okay, now let's work on simplifying that first term. I have my negative and I have my 3. Those will stay. I have 4 x's on top and 2 x's on the bottom. Who has more x's? The top. How many more x's does it have? 2. So I'll have 3x squared on the top. Now I have 3 y's on top and 2 y's on the bottom. Who has more y's? The top. And how many more? 1 more. So I'll have negative 3x squared y for my first term. Now for my second term, what do I have? 2 x's on the top, 2 x's on the bottom. 2 y's on the top, 2 y's on the bottom, so they're equal. Again, there's many ways of thinking about this. You can cancel those. You could say x to the 2 minus 2, which is x to the 0, which is 1. But in any case, that middle term needs to turn into a 1. It does not just disappear. Be careful with that. Okay, for the third term, 1x on top, 2 x's on the bottom. Who has more x's? The bottom. How many more does it have? It has 1 more, so I'll have 1x left on the bottom. Tell me about the y's. 3 y's on top, 2 y's on the bottom. The top has more. In fact, it has 1 more, so the third term just gives me 1 y on top and 1 x on the bottom. All right, that's our second example, that's our first example. Let's do our second. N squared minus 8 over n. This looks short and simple, is it? Yeah, it's simple. We'll just split it into many fractions. N squared over n minus 8 over n. And I'll simplify where I can. For the first, n squared divided by n. I have 2 n's on the top, 1 n on the bottom. So I just have 2 minus 1, or I have 1 more on top. So I just have n. And then 8 over n, there's nothing I can do with it. It just stays the same. That's our second example. And now we're ready for our third. All right, 20w cubed plus 15w squared minus w plus 5, all divided by 10w. Again, if you haven't done this, please pause the video and do it on your own. Okay, first step is to write it as a fraction. Then I'll split it into many fractions. So I take each term on the top. The terms are separated by the plus and the minus signs, and divide it by 10w. Okay, so for the first term, 20 and 10 goes into each of those, leave me with 2. 3 w's on top, 1 w on the bottom, leave me with w squared. For the second term, 5 goes into 15 and 5 goes into 10. 5 goes into 15 3 times, 5 goes into 10 twice, and then one of the w's on the bottom will cancel with the w on the top, or W to the 2 minus W to the 1 gives me just 1W. For the next, I have the W's cancel. Now, don't get confused with this 10. Even though those W's cancel, that 10 has to stay on the bottom. So when those W's cancel, replace them with 1s. You need to have a 1 on the top and a 10 on the bottom. That's one place where I see some mistakes happen. People will just write 10 instead of 1/10. And similarly, for the last term, for that fourth term, 5 goes into 10 2 times. But I have 2W, and that 2W has to stay on the bottom. It cannot move to the top. And that's it. That's all we do. So those are our 3 examples of doing a polynomial divided by a monomial. In the next video, we'll find out what to do if we have poly over poly. It's a lot more involved, so please make sure that if you've got one term on the bottom, that you do it this way. It'll be a lot easier. All right, I'll see you in the next video.